I'm bored. Let's watch Jesterbell. All right, so a lot of you folks wanted me to do a follow-up on her thoughts about the Fantastic Four after she astroturfed this movie over every little thing. She was proven wrong several times on some of her speculations, and a lot of the stuff that she complained about in her open letter to Marvel ended up just being inaccurate information or just BS. So this is her, I guess, review or follow. I don't know. She had so many videos. I just picked this one. Fantastic Four is the most frustrating movie of the year. She had mid in the thumbnail. So it's a 34-minute video, so this might be a longer one. I'm long-winded. She kind of goes on and on. I'm going to pitch her up to 1.25. We're almost a minute into this video already. So grab something to drink, grab something to eat. Let's watch this video.
Okay, take two. This is the Fantastic Four review that I'm trying to articulate and get out there. Hi, everyone. Female Frodo.
So it is her review. I wasn't sure if she had done an official review or not, but this is, I guess, her official review.
Baggins here. I watched Fantastic Four, my most anticipated movie of the year. A movie that I had kind of written off at one point as just going to be another disappointment in a year of the worst blockbusters I know that I've ever experienced.
I mean, that's all subjective stuff, but most anticipated movie, I mean, you made a video saying that the hype was gone for you. Jesterbell, you made a video like 2 weeks ago saying that you were no longer hyped for the movie. How can it simultaneously be your most anticipated movie of the year, but also a movie that you have no hype for? This is the world she lives in. Let's continue.
But I was hoping against hope going into it that it would turn out to be something good because I was seeing some positivity from people that I would normally expect to not like this. And guys, I just want a good movie. That's all I want. And I just want to see these characters done right.
Disingenuous. I don't believe you. We talked about this before. I don't believe you. You don't make videos that tell me that you want a good movie. You make videos that point out problems with films and then give very little to no solutions for those problems. You don't really offer anything. Your open letter wasn't really you saying this thing is going to be bad and here's how you can fix it. It was just complaining to complain. I know people like this in my day-to-day life that do the same thing. They just complain about stuff. They can never be happy about anything. And I feel like we're getting ready to dive into 34 minutes of her being unhappy and upset about a bunch of things that problems that she's created for herself in the viewing experience of this movie. I have a feeling that's what we're going to be dealing with.
So going into this film, I really wanted to find good in it. And I'm not saying that I really wanted to pull in some enjoyment out of it. And I really wanted to find a good movie here.
You said you wanted to find some good in it. You wanted to find some good in it. Then you corrected yourself. You could have edited that out, actually. There's a lot of jump cuts here. You could have edited that out so it wasn't there. You said you wanted to find some good, and you say you're frustrated. So the lead-in for this video is that there was nothing good in the movie, and that's why you're frustrated. And now you're saying the opposite. Let's jump back. Pay attention to what she says here.
Film, I really wanted to find good in it. And I'm not saying that I really wanted to pull in some enjoyment out of it, and I really wanted to find a good movie here.
So then it changed to a good movie. You have to understand, finding good or finding some good or having some enjoyment is a different argument than like whether or not it's a good movie. But all of it's going to be subjective. But those two things don't have to exist in the same world. They can, but they don't have to. Just because I don't like a movie doesn't mean it's not a good movie. You see what I'm saying? Like if there's a movie out there that you like, that ends up like doing really well, making a bunch of money, critics love it, stuff like that or whatever, they're going to consider that to be a good movie because they enjoy it, right? But just because I don't like it or I don't find something I love in it doesn't mean it's not a good movie. So those things don't have to exist in the same world. They can exist in different worlds.
Which is why I can confidently announce that Fantastic Four is the most frustrating film I watched all year. Why? Because there is good to be found in this movie. Good that I want to talk about. In fact, guys, this movie is better than Superman. It's better than Brave New World. That's the easiest thing to do. It's better than Thunderbolts. Okay. It's probably the best superhero film I've seen all year. But
this is the kind of I've seen this. Tomorrow we're gonna be doing 2 videos. So just so you guys know, tomorrow we're doing 2 videos. I'm looking at a critical drinker video and a neurotic video about Fantastic Four. It's going to be one in the morning, one in the evening, so look out for those. But this is kind of the way they're doing it. So they know that the movie is good, right? I don't think that any of these three, now that I've heard Jesterbell say it, I don't think I've heard any of these three say that the movie is bad. I know there's some fringe people in the Chud space that are saying it's a bad movie, but I don't think I've heard any of like the normal people saying that it's bad and like dying on that hill, right? So the argument now is that they've acknowledged it's a good movie, so they have to come up with other things to dislike about it. So the nitpicky, pedantic stuff starts to happen. Now, in defense of the other guys, they keep their videos kind of streamlined, right? They go like, we're going to do 8 to 20 minutes, and that's it. And it tells you that they're just kind of giving you their general thoughts. A 35-minute video to try and explain why a good movie is bad takes a lot of work. So I'm curious where we're going with this.
The problem is the bar is in hell, as they say, completely. As much as I can say that at least there are good elements for the Fantastic Four movie, there are so many things that ultimately bring it down. I probably enjoyed it on a first watch more than anyone else in my group, but it was one of those films where you just have to think about it. And the more you think about it and how it falls short and how it fails and the shortcomings, the more it is torn down.
So was it a good movie or a bad movie, Jesterbell? That seems like a conflicting, like there's so many things wrong with it. It's bad. You can tear it down. So it sounds to me like it's not a good movie, according to you. This is like people that watch this content, and I've seen it in my comment section. There are people that have actually responded to this whole dilemma, this whole like cognitive dissonance thing with her, where it's like either being dishonest on purpose and struggling and contradicting yourself within the first 2 minutes of your video, or you're just saying a bunch of stuff and you don't have any real take at all. You don't have a real opinion about it at all. I'm not sure which one's happening here, but to say the movie is good and then within like a minute of that say that the movie is awful and on, after the first watch it's bad, whatever, like it just doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. But then again, she's also never really acknowledged 100% that she was wrong about her open letter to Marvel. She's never acknowledged that. She said, I will eat some crow. And then in that same video, she's like, I'm not going to eat any crow. So she went from like, I'll take a little bit of it to I'm taking none of it. So she's taking none of the responsibility for being wrong about a bunch of stuff, which by the way, a lot of her bullshit about this movie was either misrepresented or wrong in that video as well. I just want to reiterate that.
Looking around online, I actually see an overall low energy from people talking about this film. Like when it came to Superman, people were just so passionate and I could not escape the discussion for weeks. But even with this film, I'm just not seeing people really come out of the woodworks to talk about it. And there doesn't seem to be that true excitement and passion. Even from,
I mean, that's entirely up to where you're looking, right? I mean, on my social media, I'm seeing tons of people talking about it. Galactus has been like the main topic of conversation. A lot of people surprised at how good Silver Surfer was, considering all the astroturfing that people like you and other people in your space did, trying to convince people it was going to be bad without, not seeing it. It really is dependent on where you go. So if you're not seeing it, it probably means you're not hanging out with people that really want to talk about it, which is fine. Not everybody has to. But again, this is one of those things where it's just not a provable thing. I cannot convince you that people are talking about it outside of my own personal experience. And she can't convince me or anyone else that no one's talking about it outside of her own personal experience. So this is a very common thing. It's like this appeal to personal experience shit with them.
People who say they like the film. And I understand why after seeing it. And after seeing it, I understand why there's people saying that it's the best Marvel movie they've seen in years and why they thought it was good. But I also completely understand people who say that the film was boring and did nothing for them.
So you have no take? You have no take. You can understand all, like everything, every complaint you can understand. Let's run this back for a second. We're over 2 minutes in this video, and I don't know what you actually think about this movie. You say you're frustrated with the movie. I am frustrated trying to figure out what you think about the movie. Because it went from good to bad to awful to I can understand people that love it, greatest Marvel movie. I can understand people that hated it, blah, blah, blah. What is your opinion on this? I hope that we get more than this double talk and both sidesy shit. I hope we get more than that.
There's people saying that it's the best Marvel movie they've seen in years and why they thought it was good. But I also completely understand people who say that the film was boring and did nothing for them, because I saw both sides in this film. I would say that the movie ultimately falls short, but the reason why that is so frustrating is because it seemed like there were some points in the film where I thought, if this just wasn't there, then this would have been a great Fantastic Four movie. And I'm going to explain what those elements are.
So again, good, great, bad. What is your position on it?
And delve into it. This movie is kind of like watching someone run a marathon, and you see them get up to speed and you go, wow, they're really doing amazing. They might win this race. And then they trip themselves, and then they get up and start to run again, and then they trip themselves. That is this movie. And I think it is another...
That doesn't sound good to me then. That doesn't sound good. Like, I don't see how that can be a representation of what you consider to be a subjectively good movie. It sounds to me like that makes it a bad movie. In my opinion, like that's what I would take that as. Okay, maybe some people like that.
A long line of films that you can tell Disney made at a certain time with a certain sensibility, and then they realized people might not like that, and so they definitely reworked it to try to change it and salvage it. I have watched, this is like the fourth film this year that I have watched that's, or third or fourth, that has been clearly reworked.
Clearly reworked. That's interesting. I don't think I'd seen a lot of stuff in regards to like reshoots and stuff for Fantastic Four. Let me check quickly. I just want to double check and see if there's anything circulating that says that they did massive reshoots for Fantastic Four. Now, I will say there's probably stuff that was taken out of the movie. Like if we're talking about stuff that was cut out for time or story, I do think that is something that we could talk about. But rework suggests that they went back in and changed parts of the movie after test screenings and stuff. So let me just check and see if that's the case. Okay, from what I can find, it seems like there's a lot of those side hustle sites, the ones that are like bottom feeding fandom sites. You know the ones I'm talking about, where they'll post any rumor, any sort of thing that comes out just to get clicks on their sites. But none of the major outlets posted anything about this. So you're not going to find it in places like Hollywood Reporter, Variety, Deadline, IGN, like you're not going to see them talking about this because there's been no credible sources. It's all hearsay. So as far as I can tell, the only people pushing the theories that Fantastic Four had any sort of major reworks or reshoots are the bottom feeding sites. And I don't take their word for anything. They're pretty much garbage. Inquirer, if that takes you guys back a little bit in time, like a gossip magazine type thing. Like that's what they are. So I don't ever take anything they say as truth. If it's not coming out from the studio or there's no like literal proof that it's happened, like set photos or interviews with cast members that say that, then it's all hearsay and I don't take that for anything. So there's no viable proof that there was any major reworking of the Fantastic Four movie. Let's continue.
Because of how they thought people would react to things. And you can tell the desperation. Apparently this was the most re-edited film ever done from Marvel.
What? I just double checked. There's no reputable sources reporting on that. There's no reputable, let's jump back a second. There's no reputable sources reporting on that. Like, this is what I'm saying. This is what I'm fucking saying, guys. Like, when people come in my comment section, they're like, why do you watch these videos and talk about people's opinions? When people are lying like this, it's no longer an opinion. It's no longer an opinion. When you're lying with your content and you're not double checking your information and you're running with conspiracy theory, tinfoil hat stuff, that's no longer an opinion. You're just spreading lies at that point.
Third or fourth, that has been clearly reworked because of how they thought people would react to things. And you can tell the desperation. Apparently this was the most re-edited film ever done from Marvel.
Apparently.
You can tell the desperation for them wanting this to be good. But the problem is that I guess they tried to re-edit and make this film the best that it could, but those shortcomings that were always there, they couldn't get rid of them. But anyway,
I just want to point out, this is narrative. This is when someone's painting, pull out your paint brushes, get your paint out. Come on, guys, time to finger paint. We are painting a narrative. So what she needs to do is she's like, I need to make a video that's negative about the Fantastic Four. And the only way I can do that is to dig into the bowels of the internet, the sewers of the internet, and find any sort of, like any criticism or rumor that could damage what is quite possibly one of the best Marvel movies we had in recent times, So I need to do that by going in and digging as deep as I can to find those things and then complain about them. This is painting a narrative. This is what they're doing.
Get into the actual review now and talk about all of the elements of this film that worked and how and what didn't work and what made it fall short. Okay. So let me talk about what I found was really positive about this film and what gave me a better experience with it than other superhero films this year. Okay. Number one, the tone of this film. I've talked again and again and again. I am so tired of what I'm just going to refer to as James Gunn's humor. It used to be called Joss Whedon humor and be referenced to Marvel, but I'm just going to say it's evolved into James Gunn humor.
All right, so I'm going to open a tab over here, and I'm going to take notes on what she's praising. So that way, if she says something stupid later on, I have it right here in my notes. Let's go.
Every film had become James Gunn's humor. Thunderbolts was Guardians of the Galaxy light again. Superman, obviously, with James Gunn on...
This essentially complaints about cringe humor. That's why I use cringe humor. People have said that is typically what they consider to be the Marvel humor, to be cringe humor. So she's saying the positive is we don't have a lot of that in this movie.
Steroid with his humor. Constantly having this James Gunn humor undercut emotional moments and stakes and any sort of tension so that I can't get invested in the film.
Okay, so she enjoys stakes and tension to get invested in the film. All right. Continue.
That's what has been happening with so many superhero movies, and I'm tired of it. That is why one of the positive elements to Fantastic Four is that it took itself seriously. Okay. It didn't constantly undercut itself with jokes. And even when there was a little comic relief here and there, it wasn't James Gunn humor. This movie is a science fiction movie, and I didn't expect that from Marvel. It does not feel or look like any Marvel or superhero movie that you've seen in the past decade or more. It feels...
Okay, so she likes that it takes itself seriously. Okay. Good. All right. This is good stuff, guys. This is good stuff.
Completely different. And on that level, I really appreciated it. Like, visually, this film is gorgeous. Okay. Like, the visuals were my favorite part about it. There's a lot of practical sets and practical animatronics that are used, and I really like to see that after just such a deluge of CGI slop, especially from Marvel. I was really just surprised with how good this film looked and how they chose to make it practical for once and moving away from all of the lazy green screens that they once used, even though obviously they would have used green screens at some parts. But overall, it was a brilliantly looking film, and I really liked the lighting and the colors of this film.
All right.
On that note, the best part of the film for me was when they went to see Galactus, and the visuals of when they go see Galactus. Not only this has some great composition in this film that I haven't seen in a Marvel film for a long time. It just looks gorgeous. But when they go see Galactus, the visuals are so inspired from movies like the first Alien or Star Trek motion picture and The Wrath of Khan, the early Star Trek films. You can tell how the great sci-fi films of the past inspired this film from the visuals and the tone. And so on that level, like the middle part of the film was my favorite part, because I was like, I can't believe it. I'm watching a Marvel movie that is not using the same formulaic James Gunn humor style over and over again. I'm watching a movie embrace the science fiction elements of it. I'm watching a movie that doesn't want to undercut.
All right, so let's go through this. She likes the tone, low cringe humor, stakes and tension, get her invested in the film. It takes itself seriously. She's inspired by the visual effects, the VFX, practical effects, and the second act is her favorite part. Hope I got all that.
Every scene with a joke. I'm watching a Marvel movie that actually looks visually appealing.
Okay, so she likes scenes that don't end with a joke.
And wants to allow itself to have stakes. And at that point, I thought, I'm watching a Marvel movie that might actually have something on its mind, that might actually have a theme to explore and have something to say about it. Because obviously, as the plot is out there now, is about Galactus wants Franklin Richards, the child of Reed and Sue, and he wants that, and he will spare their Earth if he gets the child, but they won't give that up. And so that is the ethical dilemma that seems like it's coming about at the center of this film.
Okay, so the ethical dilemma is to her that the Franklin Richards, their baby, is not going to be traded for the entire Earth. So that is the ethical dilemma that she likes about it. These are things that she likes. She likes this. So she likes the ethical dilemma of that storyline. That's really interesting because I have a feeling she's going to complain about something later, because I haven't watched this whole thing. I have a feeling she's going to complain about something later that is going to conflict with this. But we'll see. We'll see how many of these things she contradicts herself on later.
And on that note, I'm like, this is really interesting. You have something here. Once again, would not expect this from a Marvel film. And for a while there, when the characters are kind of down and out thinking about that, for a while there, it really was selling me on this film. And I thought, guys, this would have been a great Fantastic Four movie. But why do I say would have been?
Okay, so she was sold on the film. Those are all of her positives. I don't know if I'm going to bother writing down negatives because I don't think I'm going to have to, but I want to have these in front of me because I get a lot of people saying, oh, you misunderstand what she was saying or you misrepresent what she's saying. I don't want to misrepresent anything. I'm going to literally use her logic against any of her complaints, as well as interject some of my own personal opinions, obviously. But let's see where she goes with this, because she says that would have worked except for, and we've got plenty of time in this video to go over that.
Well, now we have to explore all of the shortcomings of this film. The main problem with Fantastic Four, it was a problem from the beginning. I listed it as my 5th problem in what was killing my hype for the film, and it's come to fruition in the final cut. The main problem with Fantastic Four is the casting. This casting is so lackluster. It's so low energy, and they lack so much chemistry with each other. For the beginning of the film, it really, despite it looking great, it really kind of felt dull and meandering. And sure, you could dig into it and
dull and okay. So how do we get to the great part in the second half of the film where most of that is interactions between our characters? Like she said, the second act is her favorite part. That's the act where we really get to see the dynamics between these actors playing these characters. We get to see Reed and Sue. We get to see Sue and Johnny. We get some stuff with Ben. Ben doesn't really get as much as I would like. I would agree with that criticism if anybody has that criticism. I think Ben could have been given more. But overall, that second part of the movie is really the part of the movie where our characters get to gel with each other. So if you don't like the cast, I don't see how you can like that second part of the film. These actors are the ones invested in all of these characters that are doing all the work in the second part of the film. The beginning is pretty much a sort of backstory on these characters, and we kind of get a little bit of them. And the end of it is really just them dealing with the threat of Galactus. But that middle part is like character driven. So if the casting is wrong, how can the second part be your favorite part? That doesn't make any sense to me.
Dig into what they do with the pacing and the editing and the writing that contributes to that. But for me, I contribute it to the actors, that they are not good as these characters. What kept coming into my mind is that none of these actors really have a good screen presence. Like, compare it to a very lackluster movie like Thor: The Dark World, but everyone said that they loved Tom Hiddleston's Loki because he was so charismatic as that character, and he just gobbled up the scenery around him. But for this movie, none of the characters do that. It made me appreciate just how much star power the original Avengers had and how much chemistry the cast had with each other. Like,
the first Avengers, star power. You think that's what made the first Avengers movie good? Was the people existing as whoever they are? Like, here's Robert Downey Jr., he's Robert Downey Jr., therefore movie must be good. It doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that an unknown actor can be as great as the greatest known actor. It is possible. There are people that are just really good. Saying that this movie failed because the casting are people that you don't like, and then you say that the second part of the movie is the best part of the movie in your opinion, the second part of the movie is your favorite part of the movie, the best part of the film, that doesn't compute. That doesn't make sense. Also, there were a lot of people over the years cast in the MCU that were not these big name actors at the time they were cast. A lot of the ones that we love in their roles now that are still playing them or were playing them up until recently were actors that were, I don't want to say unknown, but they weren't big. They weren't huge actors. I think it's kind of weird. That complaint doesn't make any sense to me.
Matt Shackman admitted that he never did any screen tests for these actors for this movie, and he never did any chemistry reads. And my goodness, does it show. There is just like...
Did he admit to that? Let me double check that. All right, everyone. Once again, we have her misrepresenting what was said. Okay? By omitting information. This is something that's very common with these guys. The question it was an interview with Marvel.com. The question was, you've talked about how you cast the 4 members individually and you didn't do any sort of chemistry read. When did the 4 actors actually start to click and feel like a family? Pay attention to this answer, everyone. Yes, I did cast them all individually. And once I started to put them together, I was able to have moments where we introduce each other. We had a rehearsal period. I'm a theater director. We had 3 weeks of in-person rehearsals at Pinewood so we could play and improvise and talk about the scenes. So they had 3 weeks of improv rehearsals together. So there were no individual tests prior to casting, but there was tons of stuff afterwards. So if something would have been wrong, if something didn't work during that almost month-long period, they could have made pivots or changed things, moved things around. So yeah, there were no traditional tests because he wanted to do it as like a theater, like a play. So you're misrepresenting. Again.
I said a real low energy. It feels like every character is a subdued version of what they're supposed to be. Like Johnny Storm, my videos on that have honestly aged well because...
No, they haven't. They haven't. I literally destroyed your videos about Johnny Storm. Literally. By the way, Johnny is arguably the best character in the entire movie. Subdued and low energy throughout the entire movie is what she stated. Subdued and low energy. That's crazy. No offense to anybody, I'm saying this in the most cartoon way possible. That statement is wild. It's wild.
Yes, he does have an element where he's kind of a ladies' man and he kind of is encouraged.
An element? It's literally a core part of his fucking story in the movie. It is a core part of why he's doing what he's doing. They established that at the beginning of the storyline with him and the Silver Surfer. They talk about that prior to him meeting the Silver Surfer. It's part. What they do in the movie is they set this up like this whole ladies' man thing and he's a lover boy kind of storyline, and then they go on to show that no, he's actually really smart too. They give him dimension to his character, and that all starts with him being perceived as a ladies' man. That is the core of what his character is when we get to meet him. As we go through the movie, we learn that he is more than that. That he's more than just that particular view and vision of who he is as a person.
And insufferable, but it's severely downplayed. Like, I wouldn't know that he's a ladies' man except for one line that he says and the fact that he hits on female Silver Surfer.
What else do you need? What else do you need from him? See, this is why I think it's real sus, your comments about womanizing. I think it's real sus. What else do you need him to do other than for us to be informed that that's how the public views him? What else do you need? Do you need to see an entire storyline of him going around being with multiple women? Oh, so we need an entire storyline of him going out on Tinder dates, hooking up with girls, tossing them to the side. We need all of that to happen before we get to the Silver Surfer because we're too stupid to understand that that's what his character type is. We're too stupid as an audience. So we need all of that additional visual stimulation to prove that he's a ladies' man. You just don't want to be wrong. You just don't want to be wrong. You were loud and wrong about it, and now you're trying to double down on it.
His personality is just really subdued from what it should be. And subdued. Then as for someone like The Thing, guys, The Thing, I'm sorry to disappoint you. He is a non-existent character in this film.
I wouldn't say he's non-existent. I think what he got was really good, and that's why people are so upset that he didn't get more. I think he was probably, again, one of the shining moments of the movie. There's so many great moments in the movie, but he's one of the shining spots in the movie for me. I would have liked to have seen more scenes with him, but not because I think he was non-existent or not because I didn't like him in the role. I genuinely wanted to see more of this character.
It didn't seem like they wanted to do anything with him at all. He's just in the background. And then Pedro Pascal was everything that I feared Reed Richards would be, where he just came off as incredibly wimpy and sad throughout the film. Like, I get that he's going for a very burdened Reed Richards here, and there were some lines in the film that I thought could have been interesting insight into his character and that I liked what they said about him. Like, he thinks of all the terrible things that could happen to make sure that they never happen, and that he thinks of all the dark things and he goes to the dark places because he wants to make sure that they never happen. There were parts about this.
That's literally how Reed functions in the comic books. The most prominent thing about Reed Richards is that Reed Richards takes burdens on his shoulders and he thinks that he can solve and fix everything. That's the greatness of Reed, but also a character flaw of Reed Richards. And what I'm seeing a lot of that's happening now is there's a lot of people like yourself who get on here and want to portray yourself as an expert on the Fantastic Four. You want to portray yourselves as someone who knows a lot about these characters. And when you open your mouth and you talk about them, you don't really know what you're talking about. That's the problem. I'm very comfortable with saying, I don't know anything about that comic book. I don't know anything about that series. I don't know enough about that character. I'm very comfortable with saying that, or actually doing a little research if I don't know. Reed Richards is always portrayed as someone who believes that he can do anything. He thinks he's the smartest person always, every day. That's his character. So for Pedro to be portraying him as somebody who is obsessed with figuring out the solution to this problem, that is literally Reed Richards. That is the character from the comics. You couldn't have done anything more in terms of that. And since he's on a world where there's no other heroes, he's literally the only person to bounce these ideas off of is himself. So he's very compartmentalized when it comes to all of this. It's part of what drives the wedge between him and the rest of the members of the team for a time during the film, is the fact that he's so heavily invested in trying to figure out what's wrong and he's not asking for help.
Film when I'm like, that would have been a good line between the characters, or that would have been a fun moment between the two characters, or that would have been a funny line. But with these,
that would have been a funny line. I thought you didn't want humor. I thought you didn't. You said you were praising the movie for not using cringe humor, out of place humor, jokes at the end of lines. You were praising them for that. But now you're saying that there was some stuff that he did that could have been funny and jokes and humor, because you said that you liked the tone. So did you like the tone or did you not like the tone?
With these actors, with their characters, they didn't have much energy to give, and they didn't really fit their characters. They did not have the loud, distinct.
They didn't really fit their characters. What the fuck does that mean? Johnny Storm is arguably the most comic booky Johnny Storm we've ever had. Ben Grimm was great in his role. Reed Richards was Reed Richards. Vanessa embodied multiple variations of Sue Storm throughout the years to make her like her own version of Sue Storm. Still very, very, very good. What do you mean? Let's run that back. What do you mean by this line?
With these actors, with their characters, they didn't have much energy to give, and they didn't really fit their characters. They didn't really fit their characters. That doesn't make any sense, Jesterbell. I know it's kind of subjective. That is a little bit subjective, but when they are literally embodying some of the most important elements of their characters from the comic books, it's not, I hate to say this, but objectively they did. Objectively, they included all the elements that were necessary for these characters to be the fidelity from the comics to live action is there. I hate to use that word, but that is kind of an objective thing. The loud, distinct personalities that they did from the comics. And so there was just a real lack of energy in this movie where it's like, I can handle it if your plot, maybe it is meandering a bit in the beginning, but if the characters are really entertaining, then I don't care so much because I'm just here to sit with these characters. That's why I read Marvel comics and why I would want to come to these movies. But
we've already established that these movies can't survive on just comic readers alone. It's impossible. There's not enough comic readers in the world that would spend enough money to make these movies successful. So they have to make concessions in order for the movies and the TV shows to work as adaptations of the comics. So, and we've already seen that sometimes comic readers don't even go and watch this stuff. And it doesn't always translate from watching this into reading comics. So it is a separate adjacent thing, which is why it's inspired by and adapted from the comics. I keep having to repeat this because they don't get it. They keep saying that they want comic accuracy, but when they're given comic accuracy, they find other things to complain about. There's no consistency in their nonsensical arguments.
The actors were very much B and C level. There was no one who really stood out. And
how the fuck is you guys complain that Pedro Pascal is in everything, that he's literally in everything. But now you're claiming he's a B and C level actor. Based on what? You do understand that A-list actors doesn't necessarily equate to talent or ability. Someone can be an A-list actor and only play one type of character. Right? Someone can be an A-list actor and they literally get hired on charisma alone. And they're still an A-list actor. Being an A-list actor is a statement on how in demand they are in Hollywood. So if Pedro Pascal is in every fucking thing and you guys complain about it, he has to be an A-list actor in that regard. He has to be. He's cast in everything.
On that note, I think that in addition to just being the worst casting, like this is the worst ensemble cast I've ever seen in a comic book film, where I've
the ball of shit just keeps rolling downhill. We've gone from just low energy, lackluster, subdued to worst casting she's ever seen. Worst. How can you like the second act of this movie if you don't like anything the actors are bringing to the table? Fam, that doesn't make any sense. It is impossible. It is like there's no way on earth that you can go and watch a movie where you hate every single actor in their roles and go, but the best part of the movie was the scenes where the actors were together. She said they didn't do any chemistry testing. Which let's follow her. We'll just follow her along with this one. If they didn't do any chemistry testing, why is your favorite part of the movie the part of the movie where they have the most scenes together? What did you like about that part of the movie if it wasn't for the chemistry between the actors in the scenes? It's almost like you're lying about one or the other. You're either lying that you don't believe they have chemistry or you're lying that you like the second act of the movie.
Never seen it where I never used to have a problem with the casting of Marvel films, but I've never seen it where the actors just do not have it in them to have a real presence as their characters, so that I don't feel invested in anything. But some of that is not the acting themselves.
I don't feel invested in anything. Didn't she just say earlier that she was invested in the movie because of all the things that she loved about it? These are things that she said herself that the tone was right, the stakes and tension got her invested in the movie. And now she's saying, she said earlier, she talks about stakes and tension, and that gets her invested in the film because it takes itself seriously. The gorgeous visual effects and practical effects, they're all inspired. These were her words. She praised the tone. This is what got her invested. And then she says this.
Marvel films, but I've never seen it where the actors just do not have it in them to have a real presence as their characters, so that I don't feel invested in anything. But
she also doesn't feel invested in the movie. So she's invested in it, but she's not. So she's not committed.
Some of that is not the acting themselves. It definitely, I thought during a portion of this film, there was a portion of this film that I really loved, and it was when they were trying to escape from female Silver Surfer who was after their child.
You mean the scene where they're all together having chemistry in a scene? That scene? Where the whole team is together functioning as a team? The one thing that you keep saying is wrong with them is they have no chemistry together. They have low energy. It's subdued. Your favorite scene is where the team is together, all the actors are working together in a scene.
The visuals look great, and I liked the tone of it all. Mm-hmm. And I was like, this would have been a great Fantastic Four movie if you had a different cast, because that was my main problem with the film.
So you like the shiny things. Shiny things made you happy. So now you're saying that you like the second act of the movie specifically because you like the shiny things. This is what gets views on YouTube now. These are the people that people tune into and go, well, actually, didn't she just make a video? This is the really funny thing. Didn't she just make a video that we talked about where she went after Hollywood for doing movies that have no substance, right? She complained that stuff like, what was it? Godzilla versus Kong was bad because it was all flashy, shiny stuff. And people didn't go in for the story. And then in this video, she says that what she liked about the movie, I guess the reason why she was excited about the second act, is all the shiny stuff that didn't have anything to do with the story. But she doesn't want people to support movies for that. But that's what she says she liked about this movie. It just changes with her. Her stance and her position on everything, it's fluid. It's fluid like gender. It just changes all the time. No rhyme or reason, no explanation. I wonder if it's going to change in this video before we get to the end of it.
Film. But there's more than that. There's more than just the casting.
Right.
There is a severe lack of character development in this film across the board. None of the Fantastic Four, none of them gets an arc in this film.
Except they all do, except really Ben. They all get an arc, except for Ben. I can't, let's see what she has to say. I can't wait to hear this.
Ironically, the only character that gets an arc in this film, which we'll talk about, is the female Silver Surfer. But
it's really funny they keep saying the female Silver Surfer. It's just Silver Surfer. In this movie, she's just Silver Surfer. The fact that you have to tell us she's a female over and over and over again is really weird. It's really weird.
For everyone else, you have to understand this entire plot is entirely focused on the conflict of Galactus wants Franklin Richards and they won't give him up. That is the entire conflict of this film.
It's not the entire conflict. At some point that becomes the conflict. There's other conflicts that happen leading up to that point. But that is the third act conflict. That's what we're leading into in the third act, is that because the second act, the conflict is they're going to figure out what Galactus is, where he's at, what this planet is, there's other things. They're dealing with the Silver Surfer as a conflict. They don't figure out the Franklin Richards thing until like the end of the second act, leading into the third act of the movie.
And as such, it's like we're only watching the Fantastic Four as pieces in this conflict. It's not a character-driven story.
It's not a character-driven story. So then why are your complaints about the characters? If the story doesn't rely on the characters and they don't have any particular storylines and the conflict is 100% about Franklin Richards and Galactus, why do you care whether or not they have chemistry? Why do you care whether they have a story? Why does any of that matter if the entire storyline is about Galactus and Franklin Richards? It's almost like it actually is about more than that, but you're digging again into the sewers of the internet to find complaints. It's just a misrepresentation. It's a misrepresentation. We don't even find that out until over halfway through the movie. So there's other stuff happening prior to that. Matter of fact, a lot of the stuff that you love in that second act happened before they find out about Franklin Richards. But I guess it's all shiny objects and stuff, right?
It's like we come into this world where they're already established and it doesn't want to take the time at all for us to get to know these characters. They're just there and they're experiencing this plot. And I'm like, that is the most crucial thing that you need to do for a Marvel movie. You need to develop those characters so that I care about them, not just so I care about this movie, but they want to make sequels to any of this stuff. You need to have character development. You need to have me care about them. But they don't do anything with any of this. Like, Sue Storm gets no character development in this movie. She actually does get character development in the movie. Before we even hear what she has to say, let's talk about the situation with Sue Storm. She starts out as not a mother, right? She's not a mom. She's not pregnant. We find out she's pregnant. Then we have to go through the process of her being pregnant and how that affects her in her life with the team, how that affects her relationship with Reed in those moments. Then after we find out about Franklin Richards and Galactus, where they refuse to give Franklin over to Galactus, we start to see her push back against Reed. We start to see her sort of struggle a bit and assert herself against Reed, opposite Reed in the movie, because up until that point, Reed had been calling the shots. She gets to stand up to him a little bit. She gets to go outside, make a statement to the world as the mother of Franklin Richards, asserting her position there. And then at the end of the movie, she gets an opportunity to make the ultimate sacrifice to what she can do to save her child. And it proves that she's putting her life on the line in that regard. There's a lot of things, and that's just kind of a broad stroke to like her storyline. But there's a lot more nuance in there as well that we get to see throughout the movie. But you'd have to want to see that. If you go in nitpicking and waiting to see the bad stuff, you're going to overlook a lot of the stuff you're watching. This is why it's tainted. It's why it's tainted. It really is. Anybody that hates something so proactively before it comes out is going to go into it looking for reasons to dislike it. Is just the strong woman who takes care of her family throughout the film. That's who she is in the beginning. That's who she is at the end.
The strong woman who takes care of her family. She's a superhero. She's a superhero. Matter of fact, arguably, in some instances, the most powerful member of the Fantastic Four. But outside of that, she's a superhero. Of course she's going to be strong. Just like everybody else. Everybody else on the team is strong also. Is there an issue with Ben being strong? Is there an issue with Johnny being strong? Is there an issue with Mr. Fantastic being strong? Or is the issue of strength only applied when it's Sue? Are you going to carry this complaint over with the guys and go, well, he's just a strong guy and, you know, there's nothing else to him. That's his whole storyline. He's a strong mother. Motherhood in this movie is a central plot point that a lot of chuds either did not understand or are overlooking on purpose and being dishonest about it. It's a central theme that ties into so many other factors, but we might get there. We might get there with her review. Maybe she'll reach that point.
Ben Grimm, like I said, is non-existent in this movie. They don't want to do anything with him. It's like this is the character who's the most popular member of the Fantastic Four, but you don't want to use him at all. Johnny.
I'm not going to disagree. I think Ben was done wrong. I don't know what the choices were to cut out or why they cut them out, but there was stuff in there, and I've criticized this in my video about the Fantastic Four. They did him dirty. I'd love to see more of Ben. That's probably, when I took points off for the movie, that was literally the biggest issue I had with it, was Ben Grimm.
He probably is the most likable character out of them all because they at least give him something in the film. Not an arc, but
he does get an arc. He literally gets an arc. He starts out, let me lay this out for you again. He starts out as being seen as just a ladies' man, playboy, pretty boy character that loves women, loves the spotlight. And then through the course of the movie, after having a thing with Silver Surfer, a one-sided thing with Silver Surfer, I guess, after having a thing with her, he decides that he is going to apply his brain and figure out what the message says. And he spends the entire second act and part of the third act of the movie really investing in doing that to prove that he has more value than just being the hothead. It's a literal progression of the character. That's literally what that means. And he participates in that throughout the film. I might even argue that he might have the best character progression in the movie, if you really want to like put it out on paper.
He is a bit more of, you know, the annoying type in the beginning of the film who can kind of get on everyone's nerves and can be more carefree.
Right, just like Johnny Storm is portrayed in the comics. And then what happens? Not
on the level of Hot Rod from the comics and whatnot, but that is there. So
you're going to skip over the story element with the Silver Surfer? You're going to skip over all of that?
Later on in the film, where he's showing some empathy and is trying to appeal to the humanity of the female Silver Surfer, and he is instrumental in trying to get her to change.
Right.
Like, I really felt that moment, and
You really felt that? It's almost like that's literal character progression and a story arc. It's almost like that's what it was. And secondly, how did you feel that moment? How did you feel that if you don't like any of these characters in the role? Which, by the way, let's go back to that for a second. Why do you care about any of these characters anyway if you don't like the actors? If you don't like the actors, why do you care about them? That doesn't make any sense to me. You've admitted that you don't like them in these roles. So there's no amount of writing that could have fixed that, right? There's no amount of work the director could have done to fix that. There's no amount of great acting and storyline and character arcs that could have fixed that because you don't like any of them in these roles. So all of these complaints, this all means nothing. Mark this off the chalkboard. Mark this off the graph. It doesn't mean anything. None of this means anything because you don't like them anyway.
Liked seeing the self-sacrificing elements of Johnny Storm come out when he is so willing multiple times to give his life up for his nephew.
It's character development, story arcs, yeah.
However, I still think it could have been a lot stronger. I still think that you could have just given him his original personality and not felt the need to subdue it in any way, shape, or form.
So subdued, but also out there as the face of the team, as they admit at the beginning of the movie, but subdued. It's almost like there were other things going on. It's almost like the world was at a threat level where like all of the earth is going to be destroyed. And there wasn't much time for him to go out on dates and be all over TV and stuff like that. It's almost like that couldn't have been a thing while all this was happening. But I digress.
Apparently that was a thing behind the scenes where they're like worried about where we are culturally. So this is what they came up with.
It is not. We've already established that was one quote from one interview, which ended up to be overblown by you, and you still can't accept the fact that you were fucking wrong. That you were wrong, and all the other people around you were wrong.
for what Johnny Storm is supposed to be. He needs to be a subdued version of himself, but I don't...
Subdued is your word. That is your word. They never said that. That is your word.
Understand why they changed Ben Grimm's personality. He is just kind of a soft-spoken rock creature. He doesn't have the Jersey accent or the gravelly voice or any of the fun that the original character has. What?
So you want the tone to be different. You want his character to feel out of place. So the rest of the characters have to be like regular, normal people in the sense that they're not over the top. But you want the Thing to be the jokey, over the top, cigar smoking, wisecracking, New Jersey accent caricature of himself. But everybody else has to be normal. No one, like, if every character were doing some of the things that they do in the comic books, you would say that the humor is bad. So it's again, talking out of both sides of your mouth.
Once again, he's practically not even in the film. He's non-existent. And then Pedro Pascal as Reed Richards. There's stuff that they're trying to do there about how he burdens himself with all the analytics of the world and all that he's thinking about, and that he's bringing that over to him being a father as well. But they ultimately don't do anything with it. And Pedro Pascal...
They absolutely do. They absolutely do. Fam, I mean, is this her lying to people that didn't see the movie? That sets up the entire conflict between him and Sue as a father. She gets mad at him because she thinks that he, in his mind, is coming up with ways they could justify giving Franklin over to Galactus. That's a very big moment at the end of the movie, as we're going into the final act of the film, where she has to go out and make her public statement. She has to do this because she doesn't feel supported by Reed in this moment. Because Reed, as a father, is thinking like a scientist. As Reed would do in the comic books. As Reed would do in the comic books. He's thinking like a scientist, and he's not thinking emotionally. That's what he's doing. And so it puts them at odds with each other. This is his role as a father in this movie, is that he doesn't really understand. And actually, at the end of the movie, when Sue takes on Galactus, and we have the situation at the end where they think she's dead, that is the moment it clicks for him. It clicks for him about the stakes of what he's dealing with as a father. But, you know, that would require you to actually be a part of what you're watching and not just sitting there checking off boxes.
Is completely unconvincing as this character, where he just comes off as sad constantly. He does not have any of the strength that a Reed Richards character should have. He is the leader throughout the...
Okay, so here we go. Sue Storm, you attacked Sue Storm for being a strong woman. And here you're attacking Reed for being a weak man. Look, again, I hadn't watched the whole video. I didn't know that was coming. So it's wrong when a man is portrayed, in your opinion, as a weak man emotionally, a weak man when it comes to like their position on something. But if a woman does the same thing that a man would do in that moment, she's perceived as a strong woman, and therefore that is a negative. It writes itself, folks. It writes itself.
Beginning of the film, he is the leader of the team, as he should be, but he doesn't have any sort of commanding presence. He's just kind of wimpy.
Wait. Let's run that back, because I distinctly remember you saying that Sue Storm was going to be the leader of the team, according to all of the scoopers online. The last couple of videos that I watched of yours where you talked about Fantastic Four, you were worried that Sue Storm would be pushing Reed down and he would not be the leader of the team. Here you are admitting that he is established at the beginning as the leader of the team. Let's run this back, fam.
Reed Richards' character should have. He is the leader throughout the beginning of the film. He is the leader of the team, as he should be, but he doesn't have any sort of commanding presence. He's just kind of wimpy.
Yeah, because that's the difference, right? So we know he's the leader, but because he doesn't do something that you find leaderly, I guess, is that a word? Leaderly? Since he doesn't do something that you find of a leadership quality, that's a problem. Okay, subjective.
Like all the characters in this movie, he just feels subdued, and that's the biggest problem of the film, and why, even though there were good scenes in it...
You keep saying the biggest problem of the film. You keep saying that with everything that you bring up. This is the biggest problem. This is the biggest... Like, there can't be multiple biggest problems. It's hyperbole. There can't be multiple biggest problems. There's problems, and then there's big problems, and then there is the singular biggest problem. That's how that works.
And good moments, why I think that people might walk away thinking that it's boring, because in order to invest yourself in any sort of story, you need to have characters that people feel that they have connected with in some.
But it doesn't matter because you don't like the actors. Honestly, none of this criticism matters. You've established that you think the casting was wrong. So once that's happened, it's a wrap. It's a wrap. There's nothing they could do to make you like the movie if you don't like the actors in the movie. Full stop.
Way, but this movie is not interested in its characters. It fails them on both a casting level and a writing level.
Okay.
Now, on that note, this is where I'm going to start talking about straight up spoilers for the movie, complete spoilers. Now, as you know, going into this film, I was worried about things like what we heard about Johnny Storm. And even though he is similar to his comic book counterpart, I disagree with people that he's the same. He is a severely subdued version.
The word subdued is doing a lot of heavy lifting. Stop fucking saying it. It doesn't mean anything here. It doesn't mean anything in the criticism of the movie. Doesn't.
Even though he was the most enjoyable part of the film, which is not saying much when you come to the other characters.
He was the most enjoyable, but I thought you said the second act of the movie was the best part of the movie. So now the best part of the movie is the miscast Johnny Storm. He was the most enjoyable part of the film. Let's continue.
But well, the other thing that I was worried about was it going to do the Disney girl boss thing again, where you subdue the male characters in order to elevate the female characters, and they get a lot of forced moments that seem like they're there to check a box and make a statement rather than be a good story. Well, a lot of people going into this film said that it was not the case, but unfortunately, by the end, I have to say that it is. Now, I think that the reason why
this is another lie by these guys. I want to see where she takes this, because this is a lie they keep pushing. And if you haven't seen the movie, or you're just listening to what they're saying, you might misunderstand what happened at the end of the movie. So I'm going to tell you exactly what actually happened and how it elevates the whole group, not just the one woman on the team. But let's hear what she has. I want to let her say her full statement, and then I'm going to destroy it.
To check a box and make a statement rather than be a good story. Well, a lot of people going into this film said that it was not the case, but unfortunately, by the end, I have to say that it is. Now, I think that the reason why people are saying that is throughout the first 2/3 of the film, Reed is clearly the leader of the film, and Sue
clearly the leader. Okay.
Sue is not taking over at all, and Sue is not the central character of this film.
Right, which is what you claimed. You and many people claimed that she was going to be the main character of the film, and that it was going to revolve around her. But now the goalpost has moved. Let's continue.
Franklin Richards is the central piece of this entire film.
Okay.
At least with this edit, and they might have severely re-edited it to be like that, but that's the way it is. And so that's why I think that people aren't saying it. Okay. But the problem is...
Well, they're not saying it because of the fact that it wasn't happening. Right? You said clearly Reed is the leader, and that clearly in your mind, Franklin Richards was the center of the film. Right? These are two things you said. You said clearly. But you're saying that people aren't saying it because of that? Well, that's because that's objectively what happens. That's not a subjective opinion. That is objectively what happens. Reed is the leader of the team. But let's continue.
At the end of this film, there's a moment. It's how they resolve the conflict with GLAADs. And let's talk about that. So here are the two moments that the film gets in its own way when it comes to the development or lack thereof with Reed Richards and Sue Storm, and where it might come into some bad forced territories of checkboxing. So like I said, I was really intrigued by this storyline about Franklin Richards or the universe where they will not give up.
But I thought there wasn't any actual story arcs or storylines for these characters, but you were intrigued by it. Okay.
Their child, and the public turns against them. Now that is a very interesting thing to explore, because it's such a huge conflict and moral dilemma here. And it would be such an interesting exploration of human nature. Here are these people who just adore the Fantastic Four as celebrities. Right. And then when the chips are down, they turn against them. And that would have been so interesting. And for about 10 minutes of the film, it was. But the problem was, it was like the movie did not want to go far enough. They let the moral conflict be there for just a little bit. And apparently...
It's almost like you didn't understand what was happening, right? There's a parallel between all of these things. They intersect with each other, okay? So the moral dilemma that Sue is experiencing with Franklin and as a mother is also crossed over with what decisions Shala Bal had to make in her position as a mother and a woman on her planet. These are crossing and intersecting things in the film, right? How far someone would go to protect their world and the choices they make. You have one hand where Shala Bal made the choice to protect her world by becoming the Silver Surfer, right? That was the choice that she made. You have this situation where Sue will not sacrifice her family or anything in this regard. And she's willing to stand up to Galactus instead of sacrificing herself in this way. So there's an intersection of storylines there. That is why that story exists the way it does. You're looking at it from the side of how everybody on Earth sees it. That's not the only story that's being told here. There are multiple layers to the story that you're misunderstanding. But let's continue.
In the original version of this movie, there was going to be a scene where the crowd ultimately tries to break into the Baxter building and take Franklin Richards. But here's how it goes in the movie. They make it so there's a scene, and I thought this was a very good scene, of when Reed is just talking about all the analytics of the situation, and he understands why the public is turning against them and how they would see it with them protecting our child. Right. And Sue is shocked and horrified at Reed that he would ever say that he would even make it sound like he would ever consider giving up Franklin. And Reed tries to make it clear that's not what he meant. And there's a conflict there, and I thought it was a great scene. But then there's how they resolve it. And this scene was so stupid. They just make Sue grab Franklin, go out into the angry protesting mobs with her vulnerable child.
She's a superhero. They're all regular people. Or you think the crowd is just going to attack these heroes with powers? Again, they're the main heroes on this planet. They're just going to attack them. These people they love for so long, they're just going to randomly attack her, walking out with her child. Doesn't make any sense.
And I guess she's more powerful than them, but then she just gives them a speech about family and all that kind of stuff and the importance of family and all of that. Right. And, showing them her baby. And she convinces them with their speech to all come on their side, that they will come up with a different idea to defeat Galactus. And just like that, everyone comes back on their side.
I mean, we don't know if everybody does. Yes, a lot of people do, because these are it's a team of heroes that have protected the world for so long. They protected the world for so long. I know in your mind, you believe that everybody would just give up someone's child like that, but not everybody feels that way. And that is why that conversation between Reed and Sue happens, is because they're showing the two different approaches that people take. And then Sue takes it upon herself to go to appeal to humanity, appeal to people that have children, appeal to families who have kids in a way that is heroic. This is a superhero movie. Speeches happen. They happen in a lot of superhero movies. It's just a thing they do, right? And she does so in a very serious way. There's no jokes being made. There's no breaks in tension. There's stakes here. Big stakes that are happening. There's ethical dilemmas, which you said you found interesting at the beginning of the movie. These are things that you said that you liked. They didn't end it on a joke. All of these things exist in that speech. And she does this because she's not the leader of the team. She does this because she's trying to establish her own personal values in this without the rest of the team behind her as an individual person. This is what she's doing. It's a choice that she's made. Now, of course, subjectively, you can say, I didn't like the scene because it felt out of place. But to think that it breaks the movie or that it somehow is out of place in the context of the movie is ridiculous. Which, by the way, you haven't said anything yet, but you were saying that setting it in the 60s was going to ruin the film. That was one of your open letter complaints to Marvel. I mean, we still have a little bit of time left in your review, so maybe you'll get to it. But you haven't even touched on that.
And I'm like, I'm sorry, that was just too simple. You have the entire world in a panic that they're going to be killed.
So you think that her speech was the only thing that changed people's mind? And that it wasn't that Reed came up with the way to fix things? You think that's what it was? Her speech wasn't the only solution. There were multiple solutions being presented. Her speech was about her. It was appealing to humanity. If humanity can't be appealed to, then it's not worth saving. Right? If we're talking about a world that is willing to give up its humanity to save itself, then it no longer has humanity. That is the message that's being presented. That's the moral dilemma that is happening. Look at what Shala Bal, Silver Surfer, was the one that was going around and pointing out planets for Galactus to devour. And she chose Earth. This is part of that dilemma. So the appeal is that she made decisions as a mother, as a woman on her planet, that were contrary to what Sue is doing. There's a parallel and there's an intersection in that story. All of it comes together. It's about their individual decisions and how those individual decisions can affect their entire worlds. It seemed pretty obvious to me.
And that because the Fantastic Four won't give up their child. And with human nature being as ugly as it can be, you're not going to convince people with a speech. You're not going to convince an angry, terrified mob with a speech like...
You know, this really is like, this particular complaint really does show that the disconnect between how my community feels versus this community. You know what I mean? Because I believe that humanity would want the best for everyone. While on her side, she believes the worst in humanity. She thinks that people would be their worst selves in their moment of strife and conflict. In your moment of strife and conflict is when you show who you really are as a person. So she wants this to be a world full of people that would willingly make the superheroes that have protected them give up their child at a chance that this might resolve the issue. We don't know. This is an alien being that eats planets. How do we even know this is an honest deal? Like, we don't know where this is going to lead to. I think humanity's smart, or at least I believe that humanity on this earth might be smart enough to understand that.
And it's everyone who, where 1 second they turn on them, and then the next second after his speech, they're all on their side. So they took what was really an interesting concept in this film, and they just kind of squandered it. So
you wanted Zack Snyder's Fantastic Four. That's what you wanted. You wanted Zack Snyder's Fantastic Four.
I think because they weren't bold enough to answer all of the dark questions that poses. They wanted to take the safe way out, even if it didn't feel natural or make any sense. So that was really disappointing.
So you wanted them to give up. You wanted them to give up Franklin. That's the safe way out. You wanted for Reed and Sue to give up Franklin Richards to Galactus to save Earth. That's the decision you wanted them to make. That's what I'm extrapolating from this. That is the decision you would have made. That we should just give up children to aliens that threaten us. That's the decision. That's the right choice.
Because they really had something there, but then they resolved it in the quickest and the silliest way that they possibly could. On that note,
how do you resolve that at a worldwide level? How would you have resolved that, Jesterbell? How would you have done that? Why don't you tell us? Tell us. Since that's a problem, give us your solution. How would you have resolved that situation in this film that makes sense? In a way that's better than a motivational speech and then offering a solution to getting rid of Galactus, which is what they did. Speech and solution. You keep leaving that part out. It wasn't just the speech. That wasn't the only thing. This is the team of heroes that has vowed to protect Earth. So it's not just that.
Let's go back to talking about the girl boss elements. Now, Like I said, Sue Storm just does not get much development.
I actually forgot about this. I forgot about the girl boss elements. But anyway, let's go ahead.
In the silliest way that they possibly could. On that note, let's go back to talking about the girl boss elements. Now, like I said, Sue Storm just does not get much development.
I mean, you just complained that she did. You just complained about it. Her going out and making that speech was part of her character development. So what you mean to say is Sue Storm didn't get the character development that I wanted. I wanted her to be quiet. I didn't want her to be a fully fleshed out character. Oh, wait, no, you did. You did. You say you want them to have a storyline, but what you mean is you want them to have a storyline that doesn't make her an important member of the team. She has to be quiet and can't exude any strength whatsoever. I wanted to just fill in the dots for everybody who doesn't understand what you're saying here. Because I have all the stuff in front of me that I typed out. So I know what you said.
In this film. She's strong, as she should be. This is who she is in the comics.
Hold on 1 second. I got to do something. Remember this banger from earlier in the video?
But they don't do anything with any of this. Sue Storm gets no character development in this movie. She is just the strong woman who...
Just the strong woman. Let's run this back to what you just said.
Like, let's go back to talking about the girl boss elements. Now, like I said, Sue Storm just does not get much development in this film. She's strong, as she should be. This is who she is. But there's no.
So this is who she is in the comics. I thought they weren't anything like their comic book versions. Fam, this is what I'm talking about. This is what I'm talking about.
No arc that they're giving her. She starts to take charge a little bit near to the end of the film, but that's not a payoff to anything. There's not a development on that. Okay. But here's where it becomes a big problem. Now, I'm going to go back to exactly how Galactus is defeated at the end. And there was a really great scene leading up to this where I did like Johnny confronting Silver Surfer, and where their initial plans to teleport the Earth away from Galactus, as silly as it was, their initial plans fail. But
silly. So funny. Like, she doesn't want any humor at all. Nothing humor, no campiness, no nothing. Everything has to be super, super serious. I noticed she hasn't mentioned anything yet about Mole Man and the humor with that character. That character really was just a humorous character. No mention of him whatsoever as a negative. Just skipping over that altogether. Like, we're just going to leave that out completely. Because she has too much narrative to paint. Too much narrative to paint. And it has to be around specific things that all the other chuds are talking about. So here's the thing, though. The Fantastic Four have done silly, outlandish things in comics to save the Earth. We're talking about a storyline with a giant alien kaiju who walks around the city. But teleporting the Earth away from him, that's too silly to believe. That's too funny to believe. This is where we're at.
But the third act was, after I was really going with this film for a time, the third act really fell apart. And this is how they defeat Galactus at the end. They've lost everything. And Galactus has Franklin. And Sue Storm comes out and uses her powers to the max to take Franklin and to push Galactus into the portal that Reed has created. And she winds up killing herself in the process because...
That is a broad generalization of what happens in that moment. Very, very broad. First of all, Reed created the device that is being used to stop Galactus. Sue did not. She also gets assistance from the Thing, the Human Torch, and Mr. Fantastic, along with herself, to stop Galactus. They're all working together. And yes, she is showing how powerful she is because she's a powerful character. This is exactly what she does in the comic books. She's a very, very powerful character. And they work together as a team to stop Galactus. It is not her doing it by herself. This is a literal lie, and it's a literal misinformation about the movie.
Because she exerts herself too much. And then as a Deus Ex Machina, Franklin, who I gotta say, his powers are not explored in this movie. He can just do anything they need him to do, I guess. Brings her back to life.
Are we just going to pretend that Franklin Richards isn't this powerful? I mean, we spend the whole movie with a bunch of people who may not know anything about this character at all. And we have Galactus wanting this character. And they don't show this character doing anything crazy on purpose because they want a big moment to reveal why Galactus wanted him in the first place. Because we didn't know why. We didn't understand why that was. So after Sue ends up dying, fighting with the other members of the Fantastic Four, by the way, when she dies, in order to show why Galactus wanted this child and why this child is going to be important for Doctor Doom, why this child is going to be important for Secret Wars, they needed the audience to understand that it's not just a baby. And they did that by showing that he can bring people back to life. Because I'm assuming, context clues here, that is going to be an important element of what his character does in the next set of films that we see him in. So it served a purpose in this film, and it is going to serve a purpose in later films. This is called being media literate.
I felt nothing during this sequence, and it was really ridiculous. Now, why doesn't it work? Well,
of course you felt nothing. You thought it was okay for them to give up their child. Like, why would people on Earth not want somebody to give their baby up? Why would they take her side on that? Why?
There was no build-up or payoff to Sue being the one to do that and make the sacrifice at the end.
It is The speech that you're fucking illiterate about media. The speech that she made about Franklin shows that she cared very much for her child. That was the big moment where it's like she's willing to do anything to save her child. So yes, we did see a build up to that. Literally the scene that you're complaining about is the one that they have in the movie specifically to build up to her making that decision. That is part of the reason why that scene exists, is for that very reason.
And we all knew she wouldn't be dead, but it's like Sue is just proving to be the same person who she was throughout the entire film, that she is desperate and determined to save her child, and she will do anything to be able to do that.
So they did explain why she did it. You said there was no lead or build up to that, and now you're saying that it was. Now you're saying there was, that was the entire film led up to that.
There's no payoff to her doing that, and I want to use an example here, you guys.
There is a payoff, because Reed, you can see Reed in Pedro Pascal's acting. He understands now the burden that she was carrying on her shoulders when this was going on while he's holding Franklin. It is a non-verbal, visual way of showing that he was concerned about what happened, and he had lost her, and he loved her, and he cared about her, and he was trying to save her life, and he realizes the gravity of the decisions that had been made and the way he felt about Franklin and what she was willing to give up for Franklin. All of it's there. All of it is.
As an example of a different film, The Avengers. Now, Tony Stark sacrificing himself at the end, him being the one member to seemingly sacrifice himself to save the Earth, that meant something because of the buildup beforehand, where you had Steve Rogers accuse him of being the man who would never do that. That's why it meant something, where we saw Tony Stark prove that when push comes to shove, when that is the decision that you have to make, he would be the kind of man that would sacrifice himself to...
Congratulations, there's other ways of telling a story. There's other ways of telling the story. You don't like the way they did it in this movie. That doesn't mean it's not there. It literally is. The entire movie, like you said, starts building who Sue is leading up to that big speech, then leading up to her sacrificing herself for Franklin. When they're in the ship running away from the Silver Surfer, she looks at Johnny and she says, "Kill her. She's trying to kill your brother." She says that in the ship. It is showing you that she does have what it takes to make that sacrifice. And then she ultimately does. So congratulations, you do understand that there's a difference. You have someone that is showing they're willing to sacrifice themselves versus someone who says they're not going to sacrifice themselves. The payoff can still be the same in the end. It can still be the same. You don't want to tell the same fucking story every time.
Save the world, even though he's maybe the last person you would expect to do that. And that's why there was satisfaction in that moment, is because of the buildup to it. Now, it wouldn't have been satisfying at all if Steve Rogers was the one to sacrifice himself at the end of the Avengers, because we already proved throughout the film that he would be that guy. So that wouldn't have told us anything about his character. Now, that is the same thing of this film. That's not telling me anything.
So your standard is that if a character dies defending people and we know that they're willing to do that, then it doesn't mean anything. That's your standard. That the only way we can be justified or gratified as viewers is if the person that sacrifices themselves is somebody that wouldn't do it. This is childish. This is a childish interpretation of media. It truly is. Stop reviewing movies, Jesterbell. Just stop. Give it up. Just completely give it up. This is embarrassing.
About Sue, other than what we already know about her throughout the film. She is completely one note, like many of the characters in this film. She is just the strong woman who will protect her child. There's nothing that this informs me about this character, and it isn't
that's the way you view her. That's the way you see her. That's the only thing she is. That's the struggle in the movie, is proving that she still has value outside of being a mother with a child, which is why she strives so hard at the end to work with the team to save Franklin. She's not just the mother of Franklin Richards. You're missing all of this. You're missing all of it.
Payoff to anything. Like, let's say if Sue felt a little inadequate with her powers, like she did at one point in the early comics before she got an upgrade.
Also, in order for Sue to be valid as a woman fighting and being powerful, she has to show that she doubts herself and her inadequacies. She's not allowed in the story to be confident throughout the entire film. She's not allowed to do that. But Johnny Storm is allowed to do that. Everybody else is allowed to do that. But Sue can't. There has to be some sort of doubt that she's good enough because she's the woman of the team.
Or let's say that she was being specifically belittled by people or belittled by GLAADs, that she couldn't do these things. Then when she comes through at the end and she uses this great power to save the day, that's why it's satisfying. But she did not have a build up to that payoff. But you know who would have had a build up to that payoff? Actually, Reed Richards.
Pedro Pascal, the guy that you don't like. That's the one that you're fighting for here. You're so angry that Sue was shown as a powerful character that you want your least favorite actor of all time to be the shining star of the movie.
Why? Because you had that scene earlier in the film where Reed makes it sound like he is considering the statistics and analytics of people wanting to give up Franklin Richards to GLAADs. And it makes...
So you're establishing that there was more to the story with Sue in regards to Reed. You're confirming that now. Okay, just making sure.
Sue doubt him and think that he's become so consumed by the analytics of everything and the constant overthinking that he's cold-hearted and that he would even consider the possibility of giving up their child. But you know what would have been a great payoff to that scene is if at the end it is Reed Richards who sacrifices himself to save their child. And Reed Richards shows who he is and that no, when push comes to shove, it isn't about the analytics and the statistics of everything and all that he's thinking about. When push comes to shove, when the chips are down, he will put his family first. He will die to save his son. That is who he is. That is what he would do. That would have been a satisfying payoff. And you could have still added that Sue is the one who maybe pulls them out and saves them at the end.
But that would still make her a girl boss though, right? Right? I mean, by your complaint, I mean, this is all in arguments of her being a girl boss. That's what you said, the girl boss elements. So if Sue did anything that singularly, according to you, saved anyone, that would make her a girl boss. So it doesn't matter if like Reed would have been saved by Sue because that would have again been an issue you had. Or if Franklin saved Reed by bringing him back to life, because again, that's an issue you had. So you would want Reed to die and stay dead. That's your solution. Reed would die and stay dead. Pretty bold. Okay.
But they didn't do that. And unfortunately, I have to say that when you have it so that there is not an actual buildup or satisfying development to Sue Storm saving the day at the end, and it's just something that happens, and it doesn't feel like a payoff.
It just happens, guys. The whole team working together to push GLAADs into the teleporter was all on Sue, the only person. Thing wasn't helping. Johnny wasn't helping. Reed wasn't helping. Franklin had nothing to do. It was all about Sue. Paint that narrative.
Once again, it feels like it was something that was done for checkboxing, for quota filling.
So why did they just make Sue the leader from the beginning then? Right? If it's all for checkboxes, just make her the leader of the team from the start. If the intention was to make Sue the strong leader and for Reed to be subdued and pushed down by Sue as a character, why not just have her as the leader of the Fantastic Four from the first act of the movie? Why not? Oh, because they're building up to the third act. Character progression happens. Things happen that move characters in different directions. That's why that happens. You know, the thing you're complaining about, there was no character development. That's why that happened. So if they're checking boxes, then why not make Johnny gay? Why not make him a gay character? Why not make Sue the leader? Why not make Reed totally subservient to Sue? Why save it for the end of the film? The last 10 minutes of the movie. Why? Why would they do that? What would be the purpose of that? It almost diminishes the fact that she had anything going on in the movie, right? That none of it mattered at the end of the day to you. That it all led up to her pushing GLAADs into the bubble. And that's the totality of her character. That's all you took away from that.
Like Disney and Marvel is still saying, no, you have to make a statement at the end about how strong we believe women are. Great, Marvel. Great. You
already said that Sue is a strong character. You already said that. So when would she have been allowed to show her strength in the movie? According to you, what would have been an appropriate show of strength from Sue that isn't girl bossy? Would it all have to be in the service of another man? Like in the sense of like helping Reed with something? Or helping Johnny with something, or helping Ben with something? Is there no moment where she can show how powerful she is? Is that not allowed? I just feel like it's such a weird thing. Like, her showing how powerful she is a negative because they put it at the end of the movie. That makes it a problem.
Done that so many times. You've left a lot of one-dimensional characters in your wake that a lot of people dislike. Unfortunately, Sue Storm is another one of those one-dimensional characters. Could you try to make a satisfying setup and payoff?
Again, with one-dimensional, you don't understand what it means. Stop saying it. I know you watch my videos. I know you watch them. Stop saying one-dimensional. You don't know what that means.
Off with your characters instead? Could you try to give your characters actual arcs? I mean, guys, here's another thing about the film. Reed Richards is totally subdued and doesn't have any sort of arc or development. Like, we touch on stuff in this film, but we never really delve into it or give him any sort of change to undergo. But you know what also isn't there in the film? His powers. There's a scene at the end where Galactus is stretching him and making him almost break. And I went, oh yeah, I forgot. Reed Richards is supposed to have stretching powers. They only show it like 3 times in the film, and it's for brief. Like, it's seconds long. Apparently, they thought that Reed's powers were too ridiculous to show, but it's...
Apparently. You know, at this point now, we've got a few minutes left of this video. I'm gonna interject here and make comments where I need to, but I've already debunked a lot of this stuff. Like, Reed did have a character arc. We're not gonna get back into that.
Like, you're doing a Jack Kirby-esque movie. You have a giant guy, Galactus, who wants to eat the Earth, and we've had comic book movies for like 20 years now. You guys are still embarrassed of some elements.
But you said that their ideas were silly, like the teleporting the Earth was silly. So now you want Rubber Band Man to be stretching around everything and twirling around everything. But when he does something silly, like teleporting the Earth, that's too much for you. Okay.
Even though we've already seen these work on film. So... So that's what's really frustrating of Fantastic Four. And yes, I think that delving into the film, people are going to find a lot about the mechanics of this film that don't work. But guys, here's where it falls short for me.
Another one? Here's where it falls short for me. Another one. All right, let's go.
I did appreciate that they tried to do a sci-fi movie. I appreciate that they got rid of the James Gunn humor and that they tried to have a movie with its own specific tone. But where the movie falls short, what you need to nail is your characters. That is what brings us to these movies. That is what makes us feel something for them. Even just having a simple character arc.
You know what's funny is I don't think she's mentioned anything about Silver Surfer, really. I don't think she mentioned anything about it. Silver Surfer is the one that actually pushes Galactus into the bubble at the end. I mean, if you wanted to argue for girl bossing, I think that would be, like, I'm not saying it's a good argument because I would probably dismantle it and debunk it, but you could kind of argue that that was girl bossy, right? That she shows up and then pushes Galactus in at the end. You could argue that, but she didn't talk about that at all. So that was no mention of that. What about her storyline? You said earlier, you mentioned her very briefly. Her storyline with Johnny was actually really good. And that was the parallel with what Sue was dealing with. That is why they made her... made Silver Surfer Shala Ball, is because of the connection with Johnny. That made sense. The connection with Sue and the storyline they were telling with Franklin, the decisions that she made to save her planet with Galactus, the fact that she does sacrifice herself at the end to stop Galactus, because we're probably going to get Norrin Rad in the MCU in the main continuity. So all of that exists there, and it's a very strong part of the movie. It's a very good part of the movie. And she does so with very limited screen time. Some of the elements of her fighting and flying around on the surfboard are some of the coolest parts of the movie. And you got 4 minutes left, and you've not even talked about her a fraction of this review. A fraction of it. I wonder why.
For each one of your characters. Like, even the Avengers movies tried to give everyone a character arc, but this movie just falls short of that. Casting was just so lackluster from people who aren't stars, and they couldn't carry this film. The character choices were bad, where lack of development could have been compensated for from characters that had really bright, likable, distinct personalities, like they do in the comics. But for one reason or another, they chose to subdue those personalities in the film, and they're still not really at all. They're not accurate versions of the characters to the comics.
You don't even know what those are. You don't know. I'm going to say this with full faith in my takeaway from this. You have very limited Fantastic Four knowledge. Very, very, very limited. And I think some of it comes from the fucking movies. I think some of your Fantastic Four knowledge comes from those movies from the 2000s, if I'm being quite honest.
at all. And that's so disappointing. That's all I want from a Fantastic Four movie, is for you guys to finally get the characters from the comics right. And then the character development is just non-existent for most of them. Like I said, Silver Surfer got the most development out of anyone for this film because she was the only one who was given an actual discernible arc as a character.
And yet you spent a lot of time complaining about that, and a lot of the other guys did. And you're not going to talk more about it? I could talk for an hour about the Silver Surfer in this movie. I could talk for an hour about it. You're not even going to give her 5 minutes of your video? That's crazy.
There were definitely good elements here, like the tone and the visuals and some of the action sequences and some of the moments between the characters and some of the ideas, but they ultimately didn't follow through with them. And what we ultimately have is a messy plot that just continues to get worse and worse the more I think about it. And on top of all of that, there are still these elements that are holding Disney Marvel back, where they still feel like they need to check boxes. They still feel like they need to appease a culture that doesn't exist and hasn't existed.
So what check boxes are we talking about? What, the singular scene of her with Galactus at the end is the checkbox? That's the one? That's the only one. I don't remember you mentioning anything else about checkboxes in this. And you completely given up on the Silver Surfer argument because you know that she was really good in the movie. So you just completely rolled over on that one.
Remember, this movie was made and written years ago because of how movies are made and how long they take to get made. But like, they don't want that. People want a satisfying character arc and journey, not for you to check a box to make sure you have a girl boss. That doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
She's not a girl boss. She's literally not even the leader of the team. She never argues to be leader of the team. So weird.
Matter if you make Sue Storm seem really strong on a superficial level. What matters is if you've actually put the effort to develop her character and make sure that...
How, like, what are you asking for? Superficial level. These are superheroes. Part of their strength are their powers, and like that's what they're going to show in the movie. She's supposed to yell at Galactus loudly, "Leave Franklin alone while I stand over here and do nothing." It's ridiculous.
It feels like a true payoff at the end if she's going to get a big moment. Disney and Marvel is still held back from all of these things. But unfortunately, I can see that they do want to change with this film. Like, this film was apparently, like I said, the most reworked and re-edited film that Marvel has had in a long time or ever, because they really wanted to make it work. You can tell how I think they probably downplayed a lot of the elements of Sue Storm girl bossiness for the final cut of this film.
That's all conjecture.
That they really tried to make this work as a sci-fi film. You can tell that they tried to get rid of some of the elements that audiences were complaining about, like too much humor and stuff like that. You can tell that there is a desire for Marvel to change. And listen, guys, this is better than Brave New World. It's better than Doctor Strange 2, Love and Thunder, Quantumania. It's the best Marvel project that they've released all year and released in years, perhaps. But there's still so many elements here.
We're going to stop it there because it's just going to devolve into the same nonsense. How are you going to say it's better than all those other movies, but then complain about like so much stuff? How are you going to do that? That doesn't make any sense at all. None whatsoever. This is going to be a long video. I do apologize, but it's just so much bad faith, intellectually dishonest stuff going on in this video. I don't even know where to end on this one. Stop reviewing movies, Jesterbell. You don't understand how to properly critique films. What you're doing is you are painting narratives to get clicks on YouTube. Be honest about the way you feel. Either you're extremely smart and you're lying to your viewers on purpose, or you're really stupid and I'm giving you too much credit.